Assalamualaikum. Pada SHAHRAN.
Waalaikumsalam, Prof. Apa kabar?
Boleh dengar, halo.
Alhamdulillah, boleh.
Assalamualaikum, Tuan Syed Kamarudin. Kamu zaman.
Semua tu semua mute nanti
Pak
saya
Habib,
unmute.
Pak Habib. Assalamualaikum.
InsyaAllah.
Tu macam mana apa ni agaknya kehadiran?
Baru 30 slowly coming, InsyaAllah.
Yang pentingnya orang fokus lah.
InsyaAllah. Ya, Prof. Saya mula dulu, Prof. Boleh?
Ya, baik.
Okey.
Nanti tu boleh minta kata Dr. Ahmad Suryadi itu?
Tu ada, maksudnya dia ada ramai.
Orang-orang Scopus dulu, Scopus pula apa ni, fokus.
Okay. Bismillah. Ya, Prof. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin asrafil anbiya wal mursalin. Let us begin our session this morning with Ummul Kitab Al-Fatihah. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. We welcome all our friends, brothers and sisters, especially our dear Professor Emeritus Dato Dr. Osman Bakar, to our sixth focus conference. I will leave the detail of focus to Prof. Osman to recap, to reminiscent, to tell all the good stories of focus since the last 2012, Prof, 2011. Alhamdulillah, we have organized at least under IIIT 5, and then Prof under SOASIS another 3 or 4 meeting. Alhamdulillah. So due to the current new normal, we adjust a little bit. We used to be a get together of brothers and sisters, scholars, 30 or 40 of us. We get together and we talk about certain issues. We write papers, we write articles. That's what we've been doing in the past. But now we want to expand it to our young scholars, to contribute, to write papers on issues important to us. Prof. Osman, no need introduction. Is our dear scholar, dear brothers, always committed, always with us. We have enjoyed his input, scholarly input. At one time, it's very enlightening. Prof. Osman also easily get angry if we ask wrong question. Alhamdulillah. So Alhamdulillah, I think briefly, our session will be 1.5 or 2 hour session. We will take question from the chat box. Somehow my chat box does not appear. Last time we have a small disturbance, so I disable it. Now I try to enable. It doesn't work on my PC. But please send all comment and question to my WhatsApp, 019-332-6274. I'll repeat it again at the end so that I will read it to Prof. Osman in case I cannot fix this problem. If there is any disturbance during the meeting, just enjoy it. We'll settle it. If any power supply, just maintain on the line. We will get it back up, inshallah. And the meeting will be recorded. It will be on our Facebook, on our YouTube, so we can always refer it again. And inshallah, we will transcribe Prof's speech and we will publish it in our own publication for future reference. Briefly, we have announced a call for papers last 2 months or early January. We received, alhamdulillah, around 36 abstract or around 38. So we select almost everyone. Only few are not relevant to our discussion, so we don't invite them. So the papers will be presented, the abstract will be presented on next week, on Tuesday and Wednesday. And we hope within 2 months, our paper writers can submit the full papers, maybe in late May. So inshallah, we'll select the good one. Maybe we publish 10 or 15 papers. And abstract, we will publish it as in the proceeding also. So both selected 10 or 12 papers and all the abstract will be published as the proceeding, inshallah. So this will help in small way to our young scholars, especially now it's required for all the PhD students to publish it. So this is one of our small contribution. So without further ado, we invite our dear beloved Professor Osman to continue with his keynote address and also to inspire us as scholars in this region. Prof, all yours.
Thank you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i mursalin. Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi. First of all, I would like to thank Brother SHAHRAN for arranging this 6th focus conference. The last conference was, the 5th one was held in Brunei. At the time I was there at UBD, University Brunei Darussalam, and there were attendant speakers from different countries in the region in what we call the Nusantara, Malay Archipelago, even including some also from Patani. And we wanted to have the 6th, which is what we have today. Either we gave the opportunity either for Thailand or the Philippines to organize it, but for various reasons, we were not able to do that, except that there was a kind of substitute for focus when I think basically 3 universities, in Patani, in the Sumatra, and also in the Mindanao, they had one in South Thailand, which I attended. I attended that one, but that was not really 6 focus. Yeah? So 6 focus is what we have today. For those who are new, may want to know what focus is all about. Well, this abbreviation for this is a Malay abbreviation for Forum Cendekiawan Umat Serantau. It's focus. So that stands for focus. It's FOCUS, not K, but it's FOCUS, Forum Cendekiawan Umat Serantau. We had ambitious aims, goals, but the basic idea is we would like to see that the academics, the scholars, students, especially the postgraduate students in the region, have a platform, have an intellectual platform for them to exchange ideas, to discuss current issues affecting the regional ummah. That's the ummah of the Nusantara. I think the objectives stay. In fact, developments in the last several years only go to show that the presence of focus is necessary. Focus is necessary, and I really hope that the younger academics, will help to make this platform, this forum, to grow in numbers, in stature, in strength, in influence. Yeah, and I think we are in a position to do that. After all, the Malay Muslim Ummah in the region is one of the major branches of the global Ummah. Malay is the one of the largest languages in the world. So my hope is that inshallah there will be more focus conferences after this. We open it to the various universities in the region to or organizations to organize these future events. All right, thank you, Brother SHAHRAN, for arranging this. I mean, and I'm glad to see old faces. I really miss you all, especially from Indonesia. Thanks to Dr. Habib, Brother Habib. I see Dr. Ahmad Suryadi and others, and I see old friends Tengku Muhammad, Professor, and others. So I'm really happy. So this program, and of course, I hope that after this keynote event today, there's going to be the real discussion will be when those who have submitted their abstracts will make their presentations, which I hope to follow very, very closely. So now back to what we are supposed to do today. Well, I gave this title to Brother SHAHRAN, Contemporary Islam in the Malay World. The title is Relationship between Malay Ethnicity and Islamic Religiosity, revisited. Why revisited? Well, the topic that I'm going to talk about this morning is not the first time. It's not the first time I talk about this. In fact, I did not just talk. I did publish a few writings on the title. I think the first real publication was in 2003. So that was 18 years ago. 18 years ago, I published an article, not exactly the same, but emphasizing the tension and harmony between Malay ethnicity and Islamic religiosity. Tension and harmony in the history of the encounter. Later I call that encounter marriage. I will explain later. Marriage. There was a marriage. Perkawinan. There was a marriage between Malay ethnicity and Islamic religiosity. So that was published. That article was published by Professor Emeritus Dato Dr. Asmah Omar in her journal Peradaban Melayu, published by the Sultan Idris University, and Education University. And that was in 2003. That followed a talk which I presented in Tokyo on Malayness, and I could tell you that the topic kind of raised a lot of storm. Huh? So in other words, I know the topic that I'm going to talk about. It depends on how you interpret it, right? But can be getting very heated, precisely because everybody seems to have already taken his or her position regarding that relationship. All right. So, and of course, published again in some, in fact, there's a Malay version of that article, which the, what do you call this, keharmonian, konflik dan keharmonian antara keetnikan Melayu dan keagamaan Islam. So there's a long article published by UKN. It's a book by the lecturers there. So, all right, why now? Why do I want to revisit this topic? Firstly, I was hoping that the article that I published on this topic, this tension and harmony between ethnicity and religiosity with regard to the Malays, will be followed up by, a lot of academic events or writings on the subject. But that didn't out to be so. I think the only thing closest to what I wanted, the issues I wanted to raise, was the few writings by the Professor Syed Khairuddin from National University of Singapore. He wrote a book on of the Muslim cosmopolitanism, and also Islam in Malaysia. Quite a topic, Islam in Malaysia, that is quite misleading, because the topic, because if you understand by Malaysia as we have now, where's the content? I mean, he talks about Islam basically in the Malay archipelago, in the Malay archipelago, so there also is tension, I suppose. But I made a joke. Possibly Professor Syed Khairuddin wants to apply the word Malaysia to the whole Malay archipelago, so that to go back to the old meaning of the word Malaysia. Okay, but other than that, I don't see really response to what I have written on the issue. But those who are interested in civilizational studies would find the article very useful. So I thought that, all right, with a growing interest on issues of a civilizational nature, then would find them useful. Now, so but the most important factor, the most important development, the immediate background to why I wish to revisit this topic is in Malaysia itself. The Malays in Malaysia, all right, the Malays in Malaysia. Although it is the issue applies to Malays elsewhere, but Malays in Malaysia, I would say that they are now in a state of crisis. There's crisis in political leadership. There is a crisis in intellectual leadership. There is a crisis in religious leadership. There's a crisis in economic leadership, in educational leadership. In short, when you have all this, it means then there is a civilizational crisis, or crisis of civilizational proportion. scale. That's what I see. I'm not a politician. I don't look this just from the perspective of politics, but I'm looking it from the perspective of civilizational study and in the light of precisely what does it mean, this relationship between Malay ethnicity and Islamic religiosity. The Malays had experienced already before Islam a different kind of relationship. For example, say between Malay ethnicity and Buddhist religiosity. To Palembang, for 7 centuries, they had experienced a different kind of relationship. All right. So, in other words, there are ethnic groups, there are races that had an experience with more than one religiosity. So the Malays had experience with Hinduism, with Buddhism, with Islam, and to a very much a lesser extent, but nonetheless, it is there when a section of the Malays wanted to experience a new, for maybe not of their choice, all right, but because of historical reason, let's say with Christianity, all right. So it is very interesting study. It's very interesting field of study. This relationship between ethnicity and religiosity. I think in the context of our region, rich in these spiritual religious encounters, so perhaps the best approach for academics, young academics, is to take a comparative approach. Let's say, for example, the Malays and other religions. Today, a growing number of Filipinos want to present themselves as Malays. Yes, I mean, from the anthropological point of view, they are Malays. Right? And certainly, Rizal will say that, well, I'm a Malay. Yeah? I've come up with a new book. I'm an editor with my colleagues. Colonialism in the Malay archipelago, with the subtitle Civilizational Issues. 3 chapters there are presented by Filipino scholars. And 2 of them really arguing for a plea, almost a plea, that the rest of the Malays recognize them as Malays. But they are Christians. Understand? So Professor Fernando Santiago, for example, said, we are Malays. It's true. No, we are different from the other Malays who are Muslims. He used the term Hispanized. Yeah. The Malays of the Philippines had been Hispanized. Has Hispanized. But nonetheless, I say they are Malays. So that would be interesting field of study for, yeah. So what is that experience? I call it civilizational experience of the Filipino Malays, because they are married to another religion, Christianity. Not only Christianity, it's just a particular branch of Christianity, which is Catholicism, Catholics. Now, and then to compare with Islam. So that is the topic, the importance of this topic. Now, certainly one of the objectives of this discussion, I would like to see that we discuss the present state of relationship, the present state which the present state of relationship between Malay ethnicity and Islamic religiosity, in the light of what I said regarding the state of crisis, the civilizational crisis. In other words, in order to address the present crisis, all right, we need in particular to address this as not just simply a political issue. To look upon the country as purely a political issue, I don't think that's correct. I think the best thing for the Malay leaders, intellectuals, ulama, and so on, is to look at the present crisis from the point of view of civilization, from civilization point of view, and to learn from the history of that relationship since that marriage happened until now. What had happened? Take lessons from the history, and then we'll try to solve this. But this is my point. We cannot really evaluate, discuss the present state of relationship unless we go back to history. But before that, since you are academics, academicians, there are two key terms here. Two key terms in the topic, namely ethnicity and religiosity. Normally, I would like, usually I prefer that whenever we talk about any topic, pick out the key terms and then we try to define. So this is what I do, all right? So we need to define what ethnicity is and what religiosity is. The problem is there are many definitions. You just Google alone, just Google, not having to go to all kinds of books. So you'll find many definitions. So this because ethnicity is not perceived in the same way by academics. What do you mean by ethnicity? We think we know, yeah. But then when we try to define, then we come up with several different definitions. The same thing with religiosity. Why are the different definitions? Yes, different perception. But in a more fundamental way, there's a more fundamental reason. That reason is the underlying philosophy, the underlying social philosophy is not the same among students, among social scientists and social philosophers, all right? Of course, in the case of religion, there are different conceptions of religion, different understandings of religion. What is considered as religious in one context is not viewed as religious in another context, all right? So we have been saying, of course, we have been solved this. This is not new. It's new in the discourse regarding, for example, the Islamic perspective on religion. We emphasize. And Professor Naqib Al-Atas, the leading scholar in this area, in our region, emphasized that the concept of ad-din, which we translate as religion, but it's not understood in the same way as it is understood in the history of Western civilization. Right? So let's go to religion. So certainly when we talk about now the Islamic, this is the relationship between ethnicity and religiosity, which interpretation, which understanding we are going to adopt. Right? So the question of ethnicity, yes, also dictated by the kind of social philosophy that we have. Right? So some people will include religion as part of that definition of ethnicity. Some don't. Yeah. So which one is the correct one? So these are questions, and these are questions that I hope you pay attention. But For the purpose of my presentation today, I would just define ethnicity as the state of belonging to a particular social group, in this case, social group, with to a particular social group with shared attributes and a common identity. That's how I define. Ethnicity is a state of belonging to a particular social group with shared attributes and a common identity. I think the definition is sufficient to describe the reality that we want to discuss. So if take, for example, take a particular case of that definition. Now, let's say, does, for example, when we use the word Malay ethnicity, does that fit into that definition? I think so. Yeah. So the Malays, from their own point of view, as well as what outsiders observe, the Malays belong to that particular race, particular branch of the human race, the Malay race. Of course, the word race, some people who use the English language are not happy with race. There's no such thing as race. They use ethnicity. But that's just a point of view, just one particular view. So this anyway, that social group, that particular social group, of course, referring to the Malays, and the Malays share certain attributes, and they have a common identity that allow us to speak of them as the Malays. To me, the most fundamental defining element of the common identity is language. So yes, there are many shared attributes, but language is the most important. In fact, it is, and which is Quranic, basically, which is Quranic, which is based on the Quran. The Quran talks about language as one of the ayat, or the signs of God, of Allah, and certainly is part of identity. And there are verses where referring to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent every Rasul to his community in the language of the community, the importance of language. So in other words, language is the identity of the ummah, of each ummah, of each community. And how I find religiosity in the general, to be as general, to be inclusive as possible. Religiosity is the state of belonging to a particular religion, belonging to a particular religion through adherence to its teachings and identification with its ummah, the religious community or the community of that particular religion. So each religion has its own community. I talk about this in several parts of my writings. So for example, if we take Islam as an example of this religiosity, then this definition is correct, because the Islamic religiosity means here for the Muslims to belong to that particular region. How in what sense? How do we look at this belonging? It is through adherence of its members to the teaching of Islam. One identifies themselves with that religion because one adheres to its teaching, and one identifies himself or herself to the ummah. So just as we have an ethnic identity, we also have a religious identity. All right. Now, as I said earlier, of course, for this discussion, we are looking at the relationship between ethnicity as applied to the Malays and religiosity as applied to Islam. Now, I think if you basically what I would like you all to appreciate is that before we can gauge the present state of relationship between Malay ethnicity and Islamic religiosity, we need to understand the nature of that relationship. What is the dynamics of that relationship? Right? How did that relationship manifest itself in the history of the Malays since the coming of Islam, or since Islam has been chosen as the new partner of the Malay race, or the Malay ethnic groups. To make it this present, to in a sense, to emphasize that my approach to this is not political, or not just political, but academic. So I have to bring in theory. In other words, if indeed what I'm saying is important to the field of study, to the study of civilization, in particular Malay civilization, the interaction between ethnicity and religiosity, there must be a theoretical framework. There must be a theory that I'm using that, in a sense, makes the discussion meaningful. Certainly, I would like to make my discussion to be as meaningful as possible. So I'm introducing here, first of all, before going to the theory, I am proposing here a concept called civil-regional marriage, perkawinan ketamadunan, perkawinan peradaban. Saya tak tahulah siapa di Indonesia kan sudah bicara ini Pak Yusni. Selamat datang Pak Yusni. Saya menggunakan istilah perkahwinan peradaban, atau di Malaysia juga ketamadunan, civil regional marriage. Saya tak tahu ada tidak dalam bahasa Arab, dan saya belum bertemu tulisan dalam bahasa Arab, tetapi kalau saya nak gunakan istilah Arabnya, perkahwinan ataupun civilizational marriage, I would say tazawuz hadari. Tazawuz hadari. Zawjun, azwaj. Right? Then the form tawuz. This tazawuz. The a partnership between the tawazzuj, then between the two. In this case, marriage between what and what? Is marriage between ethnicity and religiosity. The term may be new, maybe, but the phenomena is not new to us. If you know history, the majority in most of other parts of the world is a reality. In Tibet, you have a civilizational marriage between Buddhism and the Tibetan people. In India, you have the civilizational marriage between the Indian race and the Hinduism, and so on. So in other words, something that we see is not a rare phenomena. On the contrary, this phenomena of the marriage between ethnicity and religiosity is widespread. But of course, it was more so, it was more visible in the past. Yeah. So we need to ask question, when was this marriage between, in the case of Malay ethnicity and Islamic religiosity happen? Well, this is something to be studied. I mean, I cannot point out precisely when this marriage happened, because it's related to the question of when was the origin, when did the when was the birth, what was the, we talk about the birth date of the Malay Islamic civilization in the Nusantara. Well, I know one answer is to look, is to approach this question from the point of view, when was the first Malay Sultanate, when was the first Malay kingdom, Malay Islamic kingdom, when did it first appear? In Sumatra, all right, say, in the 13th century, in Sumatra Island, you have that, the Kerajaan Pasai, yeah, and when you have that first political entity, the Malay Islamic political order, that can, because that's the nature in Islam, civilization begins with that. Yeah? So the that's basically what I wanted to first, the concept. Yeah? The concept of civilizational marriage is important to understanding the nature of that relationship. But I have a theory. I would like to propose here a theory in which I try to explain the history of that marriage. The theory is what I call the theory of civilizational marriage between ethnicity and diversity, or to simplify it, maybe let's say the marriage between race and religion. It's simpler. When you use the word ethnicity, religiosity, then start giving some problem. But basically, it's the same. Basically, it's the marriage between race and religion. It doesn't mean that everyone belonging to that race, has to belong to that particular religion, because there are always exceptions. Yeah? It's impossible to have everybody in a particular race embracing the same religion. It's impossible. Yeah? Even if it's in theory, but in practice that's not the case. Yeah? What is important is that the great majority of the followers or the major members of that particular race follow a certain religion, and by trying to realize the teachings of that religion, that created a civilization. All right. Now, I would like to justify from the Quranic point of view. I wanted to justify this theory. Now, how can I justify? As a student of philosophy, and I understand Brother Aflatun, Professor Aflatun here from Palembang. Yeah, it's named Aflatun, Plato. It's Plato in Sumatra also. Now, I was inspired. Yeah, in my adoption of the theory, I was inspired by this philosophical idea of hylomorphism principle in Aristotelian philosophy. Hylomorphism means matter plus form, matter and form. Hylo is matter, madda in Arabic, and you have this morphism from this morpho, which is form, into surah. Yeah? So this is basically a marriage between surah and madda, form and matter. According to Aristotle, every physical object is made up of form and matter. Form is wedded with matter to produce an entity. And of course, this entity need not merely physical, and certainly in Islamic, when this principle was adopted by Islamic philosophy, it was adopted as a cosmological principle. And this is illustrated in the Quran in the Surah Yasin 36. الذي خلق أزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون. That is the what I call a verse, which is the Quranic basis of the principle, the cosmological principle, the pairing principle. Everything was created in pairs. And certainly among the mimma la ya'lamun, which we did not use before, matter and form, that pair. Everything came out of that pair. So the and that pairing principle is written in Islamic cosmology as azwaj, the principle of azwaj, the pairing principle. Now this is equivalent to what the Chinese have. They have the yin yang, right? The yin yang, yin is feminine, yang is masculine, it's male and female. So the Chinese yang is male, huh? The Malay yang is female. Then it is based on this principle that I came with this theory of the marriage, the civilizational marriage between ethnicity and religiosity. Okay, so we have to understand the meaning of this form and matter. One want to apply it to the marriage between ethnicity and religiosity. Form is the reality, is the meaning that is wedded to the matter. So in the case of ethnicity, it is matter to religion. Race is matter to religion. Religion is the form. Yeah, I hope you understand this. In other words, in the perspective of Islam, you have religions coming down to God reveals religion from time to time, from Prophet Adam alayhi salam to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. God gives revelation. God revealed His teaching, and these revelations, these revealed religions, contained in the books, in the kitab, the scriptures, are in search or were in search of the matter, which is the ethnic group. From this point of view, ethnic groups exist for the sake of religion. Right? Of course, historically, it started with a particular ethnic group. In the case of Islam, the first matter, if you want to use that symbol, the first matter which accepts that, which receives that revelation, was the Arabs. So the Arabs, it was part of the divine plan that the last messenger is the Prophet Muhammad, an Arab, and the religion revealed to him will be wedded to the Arab ethnicity. All right, Arab ethnicity. Of course, that marriage will mean that marriage involves certain commitments on the part of the Arabs, including of throwing away, discarding what is not fit for the marriage, meaning the pre-Islamic or the Jahiliyah components, but while retaining the rest. So in other words, Arabic ethnicity before Islam were not totally rejected by the new religion, not totally accepted, but there was that kind of making it a differentiating thing, right, for the new religion. So that happens to me. That happened with all the other marriages between ethnicity and religiosity. So let's say for the Malays now, they're the Malays. The Malays, say, were Buddhists before, certainly certain parts of the Nusantara. Some other parts remain Hindus. But let's say they take the part, the Srivijaya, where Buddhism prevailed, and later they became Islam. So when the Malay Buddhists became Muslims, that did not involve that. So that new marriage did not involve the rejection or abandoning of everything that was left by Buddhism. That cannot be the case, yeah? Because the nature of the soul is different. The nature of the truth is different. After all, considering the fact that Islam is a very comprehensive religion, it's a very, very inclusive religion. Islam did not come to replace everything that went before, but to confirm. This is emphasized by the Quran. Islam came to confirm the truth that went before. So that, in other words, so many things from Buddhism, all right, were true from the perspective of Islam. But of course, Islam being the new religion, in terms of the ways of life, in terms of the Sharia especially, this is new. In other words, Buddhism did not have Sharia in the sense Islam has. Right? But the point is, we need to understand in this civilizational marriage between ethnicity and religiosity, especially you can talk about new marriage. Yeah? It is possible that part of that Malay ethnicity, which was retained by Islam, all right, were so retained precisely because they do not see any conflict with Islam. So another thing is about terminology, which is the concern of some people. It's as if that by changing terminology, our Islamicity will necessarily be enhanced, which is not true. In fact, here there's a different practice here between the earlier Malays and the present and the modern Malays. Right? The Malays in the past, when they embraced Islam, except for some cases, all right, they did not need to change the vocabulary, even though those vocabulary pertains to religious things, like syurga, neraka, sembahyang. Yeah, it doesn't mean that the moment they became Muslim, they started changing all the terminology in their previous experience. No. What happened is that, yes, there might be change. They broaden the semantics in it. Yeah. Because there must be some differences in the conception, let's say, of heaven, the conception of hell, and so on. But the word, they don't change. In other words, this is what they call what scholars call the broadening, the expansion of the semantic meaning. In other words, the semantic meaning of syurga in the Malay Islam civilization is different than the concept of the semantic field of syurga in the previous civilization. But now it's the question of let's say salat and sembahyang. Salat. Yes, of course. I mean it is But my question is, I mean, all the while the Malays They know the salat, yes, but the reality is salat, yeah. But they do not use that. They just do as sembahyang. You mean their sembahyang, their prayer was any or lower quality just because they use the word sembahyang and not the word salat, right? This question of going of forms of a what do you call it of a substance. It's different. I'm using the word form now in a different context now, not form as opposed to matter, but form as opposed to substance. Yeah. This is a very important thing to look upon when we compare between the say the Malay Buddhist the Malay Buddhist ethnicity, all right, compared to what we have in the case of Islam. But we all believe in Islam, of course, that Islam is the most comprehensive of all the religion. Yeah? In fact, Islam comprehends the teachings of all the other religions. We believe that the Quran is the synthesis of all the previous books, of all the previous scriptures. So being the most comprehensive, the most inclusive, so the problem of the new marriage will not arise. Yeah. Of course, what can make the difference is if we do not know our religion, if our understanding of religion itself is not up to the requirement. So this what does this mean now when we encounter this problem, what I call this crisis just now? We need to examine, does the problem come from the Malay ethnicity or it comes from the religiosity? Well, I'm sorry to say that it's regret to say that as we examine the problem, there's very, very something serious to the point of why we are having a crisis. Is because number one, the dimension, or in other words, that part of the partnership, which is the Islamic religiosity, somehow what is being practiced is not the entirety, but only a department of it, a part of it. Let's say question of knowledge, in simple knowledge. In the history of Malay Islamic civilization, have we really ventured, have we really treated all the different branches of knowledge that are necessary to the survival of Malay Islamic civilization, especially in the context of modern time, when knowledge from the outside sources, from the modern West, for example, enter into Islam, and have we really treated that? Because obviously it's not. That's why we have the program called Islamization of knowledge and so on, because we see that it's a new body of knowledge coming inside, coming into our fold, and we are not able to make sense of that, or we just simply adopt everything that comes in, causing digestion problem, intellectually speaking. And that is reflected also in the categorization of ulama that we currently have in our own society. Yes, maybe some progress, some new development in a positive sense, but still maybe not to the level that we would like to have. All right. What I mean here, in the past, during the golden age of Islam, when there was balance between the different functionaries in society, functional groups in society. So we have the people of knowledge divided into, say, the ulama, fiqh, the fuqaha. We have the ulama kalam, the mutakallimun, doing their job. We have the ulama falsafah, the falasifa. And of course, even that ulama falsafah grows, develops in a more, in a more inclusive way until it's not static, peripatetic philosophy of the Mas'iyun. I mean, that was only one phase of Islamic philosophy. That is not the entire history of Islamic philosophy. Then the ulama tasawwuf. So when these four major groups of ulama, all right, exist in a society in a balanced way, in a sense, right, then only we have a civilization that is balanced. I think in the past, for the most part, there was a sort of balance in the marriage between Malay ethnicity and Islamic religiosity, because we were able to feel. I'm not saying that in Malay Islamic civilization we have really good philosophical tradition, but certainly we have kalam. I mean, we have a dynamic, all right, dynamic the group knowledge among the mutakallimun, and then we have, of course, the Sufis, right, and then the fuqaha. Maybe not the fuqaha in the sense of the pathetic philosophy. That was not, but of course that philosophy was already synthesized with Usuluddin, for example. So in the post Al-Ghazali era, philosophy took a different form in the Islamic world, including in the Malay Islamic world. So that for some time in the history of Malay Islam, all right, we can speak of sufficiency, stability at the intellectual level. So when really the marriage between Malay ethnicity and Islamic religiosity got rocky, a rocky marriage now, yeah, I would say since the age of the era of colonialism, and the post-colonial era, we have not really come to terms with this challenge. So what's happened? Yeah. So there are many factors contributing to the present state of crisis in Malay Islam. Yeah, in Malay Islam, because to me Malay Islam was the legitimate offspring, legitimate child of that marriage between Malay ethnicity and Islamic religiosity. Legitimate marriage, but that child now is getting, the marriage is getting problematic because of various reasons, both internal and external. External, in the case of Malaysia, what happened? In the case of Islam, in the case of the Malays in Malaysia, let's say, for example, the addition, the ethnic diversity, the post-colonial, or rather during the colonial period, we have this ethnic diversity. Have we been able to address this problem of diversity, ethnic diversity? Apparently not. Apparently not. It is not. So there's a problem. We have to deal with that. How can, with Islam, with the help of Islam, how can we address that? That remains to be discussed. Yeah, that needs to be discussed. But first, we must accept that Islam has the capacity to address this problem of ethnic diversity. But we cannot address that by using the same kind of knowledge. So the problem now, we are producing more of the same. This problem, we are producing more of the same. We need something different, but it's there in the treasury of Islamic thought. So perhaps in the past, the Malay Muslims do not have that problem, but another problem. So the way to respond to this is by accessing the treasury of Islamic thought that pertains to the problem of ethnic diversity. The same thing with the problem with regard to knowledge. All right? There's a new body of knowledge. We should be guided by the treasury of Islamic thought. It's there waiting for us to access it and then reapply that wisdom to the knowledge. The question of needs, for example, we must accept that even though we are one as Malay, we are one in the religion, same religion, but Islam is not monotonous. Islam is not what we call uniform. All right. In other words, Islam is a religion that is also able to cater to the varying different needs of its members. That must be realized. If it's not realized by the religious ulama, for example, so if the religious leadership, if the religious scholars look at our needs as the same kind of moral needs, same kind of intellectual needs, especially, then we are not going to solve the problem. We need to recognize that different groups of people, different types of people need different intellectual things. In other words, our intellectual needs are not the same. I think part of the problem in modern time is precisely that. We think that these needs that are given to one part of Muslim society, that is you should give them to the more, say, philosophically minded or no, the intellectually minded people. Then everything, if you can do that, it's nothing happen. We accept that. No, I don't think that is the case. Yeah. So the ability, yeah, to do that. In other words, now in the new relationship between, in the new marriage, not new marriage. I mean, what I mean is in the addressing this marriage problem, we need to re-examine in the context of the present times what our needs are. Okay, I think I've spoken more than 1 hour already, but I just want to close with this statement that at a time when the very concept, idea of Malay Islam is being questioned, I would like you all to re-examine this. I don't think in the sense of abandoning the idea. Certainly not me. I accept as a legitimate concept, as a meaningful concept, but there are new problems encountered, and it's question of re-examining our present position. And I believe that whatever problems, issues that we have, this can be addressed gradually, can be addressed by appealing to the wisdom, both theoretical and practical, that is contained in the Islamic tradition. Maybe we have lost touch with that, but it's time to have a relook, so in a sense to revisit again this problem. So thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you so much, Prof. For the following session, will be 2 parts. We will invite our senior friends who are, their video is on, that I see that Prof. Husni Sabi, Pak Habib, Prof. Tengku Muhammad, and Ahmad Suryadi, or any old friend who want to say a few words, just switch on your video, then I will unmute you. And the second part, there are a few of our paper presenters present here in this session. We will invite them just to say their name and their topics. because there are 20 or 30 of them, so we don't have much time. Their name and which university they're coming from and their topic, and that's all. So, Pak Yusni, we will unmute you. Please say a few words from Aceh. Please unmute yourself. And then Pak Habib after that.
Good. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Salatan wa salaman ala Rasulullah. Thank you for this. Really, although it is very recent, I got this message, the clear message, very full. I got it yesterday from Pak Habib. And thank you, Pak Habib. But the exact address of this seminar, I just got this. Thank you for the really great presentation. I have not heard your voice, Prof. Osman Bakar, for so long, since in Brunei Darussalam some years ago. Alhamdulillah. And now I think this topic is really significant. Just I have one point here. The problem of Malay ethnicity and Islamic religiosity. We have been proud of having this kind of double or intense identity. But in a way now, with the globalization, these two identities, two uniting identities has been challenged very much. There are now also few Malays. I mean, what I mean by Malays, including of course the Acehnese and others, they have been trying to live their own Malay identity. Let's say even their mother's tongue, for instance. I mean, the very basic of the Malay identity. Some even don't speak well, even in the family life, in the social life. Not good bahasa Melayu or bahasa Indonesia or bahasa Aceh anymore. That's one thing. And when you forget the very roots, and then you may also lose or decrease your quality of nationalization and so on. And then, of course, there are with the global missionaries and so on of many other religions and challenging each other. Also, there are Malays also. Malays, as mentioned already, they are also living their religious or Islamic identity, and they are going, so to say, going astray now. What should we have as a formula or strategy or methodology in defending this kind of very precious identity? Thank you. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih. Thank you very much, Pak Yusni. Yes, it's a long time. Well, we met last night in Brunei. Alhamdulillah. Now, I'm trying to understand your question, the context in which you are talking about in Aceh. I do not see any necessity to change my theory that I'm using. I think the theory that I presented would be able to accommodate the problem or the issue that you posed if we accept the idea of multiple identity. And certainly, Maturi, yes, precisely I started earlier in my presentation. There are different definitions of ethnicity, precisely because there are different understandings of that word, different perception, and we are using the word, applying the word to different levels. So in my case, the one that I presented is more concerned, all right, the Malay is the identity, but the Malay here in the anthropological sense, people of the Malay stock. But people of the Malay stock used to be called the Malay race, for example. All right, there are many sub-ethnic groups. Language is the most important, as I said, language is the most fundamental element that determines the identity. Yes, we have the regional language, the universal language, the Malay universal language that was adopted for the whole of the Malaysia, Indonesia, the Malay world. But in that, but in the included in that broad definition of the Malay language, you have many sub-ethnic groups. Ya, orang Jawa, orang Bugis, orang Makassar, orang Aceh. We have that. So you also have language, what you call dialect. So dialect, local dialect, which may still be practiced. All right. To me, the new development in the modern world, in the contemporary world, they emphasize more in the age of postmodernism, the idea of giving the rights, the rights to even the smallest sub-ethnic groups to recognize their rights. That is not at all affected. Yeah, it's not affected. So the problem is not now with the theory that I'm presenting. Now that is at a practical level, at the policy level, whether one the leaders whether they want to accept it or not, that's a different thing. Yeah, nothing to do with. But it's not an academic issue. It's not like the issue. Different. So I have no problem with these different sub-ethnic groups demanding this and that regarding the usage of their dialect, all right, in public life. So demanding radio station also in their having, to broadcast using. That's fine. So in Malaysia, you had the Orang Asli also demanding of that. Yeah, because the larger framework is very important. Is the larger framework. In fact, see the great success of Islam, precisely what I call the religious genius, and I have not mentioned yet this, ethnic genius and religious genius. So when you have a marriage in which there is harmony between ethnic genius and religious genius, we will have a very interesting civilization. So the yes, I was saying that if the problem is really not, there are some people who use it. For example, Arnold Toynbee, that historian, the British historian. Yeah? One of the great successes of Islam is precisely to manage this civil relational marriage between ethnicity and religiosity. Under the same religiosity, you can so have many different ethnic groups living in harmony. So that's my response, Pak Yusni. Yeah, from the perspective of my theory, I do not see a problem. But whether policy makers want to have that's another issue. That question. But certainly, Islam is in favor of recognizing the language. Yeah, Islam has a good record of protecting the languages of people. It's interesting to note that one American scholar, I can't remember his name, when talked about the survival of adat customs, adat in the Philippines. He said, if you compare the pre-Islamic culture in southern Philippines, in Mindanao, where the majority of Muslims are now, and those in the north, he said, the south was more successful in preserving adat than in the north. Why? Because in the Islamic conception of the Sharia, the Sharia was comprehensive enough to accommodate adat, which does not contradict itself.
Thank you, Prof. We invite Pak Habib. Maybe you can share with us the past 4 or 5 focus before.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. It's indeed a great pleasure to see all of you, Prof. Osman Bakar, Prof. Yusni Sabi, Dr. Suryadi Nomi, and all brothers and sisters after this more than 1 year that we cannot meet. And I'm happy to listen from Prof. Osman Bakar. Actually, from the very beginning, I mean, at least since 2012 when we met in Palembang, and then 2013 we met in Phuket, and the last meeting was in Swasik in Brunei Darussalam, that we share our common concern about the fokus forum cendekiawan umat Serantau. When we talk about the ethnicity and also religiosity, because I differ from the ethnicity and religious identity, which became the new discourse after the end of the Cold War. Because after the Cold War, we discussed more on the ethnicity and religiosity as the what we call new attribute and new identity. But the way they focus presenting the ethnicity and religiosity is more in the academic. And also, we would like to contribute to the world civilization. From our ethnicity, from our religiosity, we would like to contribute in creating the new science, the new knowledge, the integrated knowledge and science for the peace, justice, and sustainability. Because you know that from our what Prof. Osman Bakar mentioned, the genius ethnicity and genius religiosity, we could produce or create new way of thinking, new way of life, even new what do you call the worldview which in depth, I mean, has deeply rooted in our tradition, deeply rooted in our faith, which we contribute to the world civilization, which is more peaceful, more sustainable, and also more just. Yeah. So that's what I would like to share to Prof. Osman Bakar. Why don't we push this our focus for the more I mean concern about this just world, about the peaceful world, and about the sustainable world? Because from our tradition, from our Malay tradition, from our Malay adat, we can share our richness, and long history, long history. Yeah, I think we can contribute from this what Professor Osman Bakar mentioned, the indigenous, what do you call, indigenous ethnicity and ethnicity. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Unmute, Prof. Unmute.
Comments.
Okay.
No comment, because he's just affirming something, and I'm fully in agreement with him.
Okay.
Inshallah.
Okay,
inshallah. With this topic is very broad. I mean, we are going into a very, very broad field of study. So the important thing is that we just don't have once and then stop. Yeah? No, this is must be a continuous program. So many things to be said. But just regard this one as just the beginning of our discourse, inshallah.
Thank you so much, Prof. Now we invite the paper presenters, but you must on your video so that I can unmute you. I know Dr. Ramadan from Medan, Ibn Khaldun from Samarinda, Brother Al-Paslan, who are submitting. They all are here. So if you open your video, then I can unmute you. You can introduce yourself and your topic of your paper. My screen, I know Dr. Bibi is here also, Dr. Razina. Okay, Brother Al-Paslan, you first. Just share us your name and then your title of your paper. Please unmute, brother.
Assalamu alaikum, dear all.
Assalamualaikum.
Dear lecturer, Osman Bakar. Could you hear me properly?
Yes, yes, we hear you. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Where are you now?
I will mention about the effect of Islamic thinking, Islamic thought, Islamic identity actually. These ideas coming from Naqib el-Attas in shaping Malay worldview. Then especially it is effect on resisting to colonial worldview. So in his book, in Naqib el-Attas' books, he especially mentioned about the effect of secularity on the image of Muslim thinking, the image of Muslim mind. So inshallah, I will mention about the strong effect of Islamic on shaping Malay worldview at first, then resisting to colonial worldview, especially to resisting to the image of secularity, secular worldview, inshallah.
Thank you, Brother Paslan. He is doing his PhD at ISTAC. Currently, he's from Turkey.
Yeah, I'm from Turkey. So when I start to study in ISTAC about Malay worldview, Malay Islamic thinking, I got so many similar aspects with Turkish issues. As you know, as you said, Islamic identity, Islamic thinking, resisting to secularity. So I am so excited to study in ISTAC. I really thank you all.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, for others, please on your videos, your paper presenter, then I can unmute you. So that I know there's few names are here. Prof, there's one question from Brother Muhammad from Jogja. The question is the colonized story impact of Islam identity impacting of Islam identity on the country, like Dutch for Indonesia and British for Malaysia? How this colonized impacting our religion?
Well, that is a very big topic. The question is very broad. It's very broad. Of course, I mean, if you want to talk about the impact of Dutch colonialism on the marriage between Malay ethnicity and Islamic ethnicity, I mean, it's substantial. The impact is. You just look, I mean, for example, at the what do you call in terms of, say, let's say look at the economy, of course, because the main interest of Dutch colonialism, the Dutch East India Company, the VOC, was to control the resources of the East for their empire back home, right? And of course, they were fighting against other, this inter-European rivalry affects us. So, because there's not just one colonial power interested in our region. The British were there, the Portuguese were there, the Spaniards were there, the French were there, the French also briefly in Sumatra, so the inter-European rivalry did affect the growth of the development of the civilization. But the fact that we were divided, divide and rule, we were divided. So whereas before the colonial powers came, the region. First of all, the Malay was the lingua franca of the region. All right, that was the language of the entire archipelago. All right. Yes, there were many dialects, local dialects, but the existence of those dialects did not prevent a common discourse in the universal Malay, universal language, so that the ulama, the scholars from one part of the archipelago can go to another part and easily have a common discourse. So the region became divided physically as well as intellectually. many institutions, our political institutions were destroyed. Yeah, when we realized how important was the Sultanate to the Malay archipelago, what the Dutch did, basically, well, some people say it's bad. So I can go on, but because your topic, as I said, is that requires another long discussion, another long talk, lecture. The impact of the Dutch colonialism. Yeah, you know, today you have the Malay diaspora in South Africa, Cape Town. Basically, they all came from what is today used to be Indonesia, from Makassar and so on. The Dutch exiled the people who opposed to the Dutch. They were exiled to other parts, to Sri Lanka and to what they call Madagascar, to South Africa. Yeah. We can talk about on and on about what the Dutch did, and of course also with the same thing with the other countries. In fact, today we need a new narrative. Yes, we need our own narrative about the presence, what the Dutch did to our part of the world. I'm not denying there are also the good things that they did. Yeah, but I just came across the writing of Dr. Bondan Kanu Moyoso from an university in Indonesia about the Treaty of Breda in the Moluccas. What that treaty mean? Yes? Sign a treaty, because as we know, all these treaties were one-sided treaties by the powers. We were the poorer in having these treaties. Yes, brother. So yeah.
Thank you, Prof. Now on my screen, I see Dr. Ramadan from Medan, Dr. Razina, Dr. Faisal, Dr. Sharifa. Dr. Ramadan, you first introduce your name and your paper briefly.
Pasir.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dr. Ramadan Sirigat.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
Pasir.
Silakan.
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah, in Bahasa also okay, no problem.
Yes, Bahasa. Huh?
Yeah, just briefly, yeah.
Tak dengar.
Oh, okay. So Dr. Razina, go ahead. Please unmute yourself.
Okay, Assalamualaikum. Thank you, Brother SHAHRAN. Assalamualaikum, Prof. I'm Dr. Razina from basically I was from IIBF, okay, but then I have a special interest in this research, Islamophobia. Basically, this is a research relating to the existence of Islamophobia, where I trace several examples from selected countries in South Asia, and then basically what I found in general, Muslim Malays are facing, a kind of internal issue where they are basically, feel sorry, they feel that certain element basically in facing liberalism, they feel that maybe our Islam is not that enough, and then if we refer back to the constitution, especially like Constitution of Malaysia, we cannot detach Islam and Malays, okay. But then for my research, I found that basically they feel sorry that we have to we need to uphold the values in Islam, but then at the same time they also want to accept the modern elements, okay. And then I also in this research I also take several examples for the recent issues, such as the latest cases relating to the conversion case, okay. And then of course but then when come to the level of Islamophobia, I found that actually it's quite different from one country to one country, and then it especially depends on how the Malay cultures apply in the country. But then when we are focusing to Indonesia, I find that we cannot leave these Islamic values. When we depart from these values, Malays are not Malays anymore. That's what I found actually. Okay.
Okay.
It's only a brief. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. But Dr. Faisal, our friend from Bangladesh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullah. Good morning to everyone. Thank you very much, Brother SHAHRAN, for giving me this opportunity to say a few words about my topic of presentation in front of this great scholar, Osman Bakar. He is always dear to us, and as you all know that I have from IIIT scholarship. I just completed my PhD from IIUM, and Professor Aslam Hanik was my supervisor while I was researching on sustainable development. And in my PhD thesis, I have actually basically two issues. First, we have argued that religion has a role when we talk about sustainable development positively. We argue that the current framework of sustainable development, they didn't address religion properly. So religion is actually the missing pillar in discussion of sustainable development. That how we address in the thesis. Then later on, what we did in the thesis, we have tried to measure the performances of the OIC countries in terms of a sustainable development index. And for our index, we have used Maqasid Sharia framework, actually these 5 dimensions of Maqasid, and we tried to operationalize and measure the performance of the Muslim world. Actually, why I bringing the issue of my thesis, because when I talk about this presentation in this conference, actually I'll try to say few words from a part of my thesis, because here we're going to look at the connection between Islam and sustainable development, and in the perspectives of the Malay world perspectives. So I'll try to see why in the Malay world, Islam is very vital when you talk about sustainable development, and so far how Islam has contributed to the sustainable development issues in Malay world, and how far it can contribute in the future. That's how I plan, and I also would like to hear from Professor Osman Bakar to give some suggestions so that I can improve further to my presentation. Thank you very much,
Dr. Faisal. Now we go to our dear Sister Sharifah. Sharifah Nurul Huda.
Yes. Assalamualaikum warahmatullah. I introduce myself. I'm Sister Sharifah. I'm an ISTAC student, PhD candidate. I'll be presenting a paper entitled Cambodia's Pursuance of Muslim Identity and its implication to Malaysian Muslims. So I will save all the details in my presentation. That's my brief.
Okay. Now we go to our brother Nuruddin from Gajah Mada. Yeah, yes, brother. Go ahead.
Terima kasih, Saudara SHAHRAN. Senang bisa berjumpa dengan Anda, Prof. Osman Bakar. Nama saya Nuruddin Al-Akbar dari Universitas Gajah Mada, Yogyakarta. And my paper is entitled Islamization of History, Kuntawijaya Model. I'm very happy to hear your explanation, Professor, regarding the importance of maintaining a healthy connectivity, or we can say marriage between ethnicity with an emphasis on a common language and religion. It can be said that Kuntawijaya idea, which I try to discuss in this paper, has a similar spirit. Maybe I can say Kuntawijaya has another term to define this connectivity or marriage, namely the prophetic path from the way of the Prophet Muhammad. Where Kuntawijaya, I believe, want to placing Islam as a liberating force for Malay ethnic, both Muslim and non-Muslim, in the Indonesian territory, especially for Wong Cilik, the oppressed, from the various problem of dehumanization they experience in the modern world. Maybe this is my explanation about my paper. Thank you.
Thank you. Bro, you want to reply first, bro, before others? presenting
No,
briefly?
please proceed.
Oh, okay. There are few names here, but they are not opening their videos. So I have Dr. Ahmad Suryadi. He's not a people presenter, but our brother. You want to say a few things,
Yes,
Dr. Ahmad?
yes.
Okay. Please unmute yourself, Dr. Ahmad Suryadi.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Dr. Osman Bakar. Assalamualaikum. Apa kabar? Sehat ya?
Baik.
Alhamdulillah.
Maybe I can access my opinion in bahasa ya?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Yeah.
Pak Habib, ya, Yusti, terutama teman-teman semua. Saya melihat seperti ini ya, bahwa mengapa tidak kawin gitu ya antara what is called ethnicity Malay and Religiosity Islam itu karena memang kita berhenti di level Islam sebagai ritus atau ritual saja. Ya. Kita sudah merasa Islam di tanah Melayu ini, Melayu Nusantara ini, ketika kita sudah menjalankan rukun iman dan rukun Islam saja. Hampir mungkin 80% pemahamannya seperti itu. Kita tidak memerlukan pemahaman keagamaan atau Islam Religiosity itu sebagai way of life. Jadi saya kira akar mengapa kita musim terbesar di dunia, ya, tetapi tidak menjadi penentu dalam perubahan-perubahan sosial. Ya. There are no agenda for developing social civilization, Islamic civilization in Malay world. No agenda. We long time to discuss about how to make Islamic civilization in the last civilization in Malay world gitu. But no agenda until right now. So the problem, I think, how to make explanation itu, atau bagaimana kita merumuskan ya pendekatan baru bagaimana Islam itu punya dimensi sosial yang luar biasa. Hambatan pertama adalah di model negara bangsa ini gitu. Saya melihat Indonesia sekarang sedang ramai ini math, educational math ya. Jadi membangun bagaimana peta pendidikan Indonesia ke depan tidak menempatkan agama dalam rumusan konsepnya. Jadi biggest problem gitu. Padahal pemimpin-pemimpin kita sudah haji, presiden haji, anggota DPR semua muslim, tapi nggak deliver terhadap tools perubahan sosial. Ini problem utama karena kita ya nggak ada ininya toolsnya tadi. Nah, proyek integrasi science and religion stuck gitu maksud saya. Tidak ini berhenti di pemikiran saja, tidak turun ke model-model textbooknya dari bagaimana itu mengharmonisasi pendekatan dengan sains dengan Islam. Jadi ini problem utama dan ini saya kira memang di dunia pendidikan kita. Nah sekarang lagi Indonesia khususnya misalkan itu sedang ada ya bukan Islamofobia, model Islamofobia itu sudah juga terjadi gitu. Pemerintahan banyak melakukan pressure terhadap aktivis karena memang tadi pemahaman terhadap Islam is a way to solve the problem, to make a new civilization. Gitu. Nggak ada itu pemahaman itu. Jadi kalau tidak ada dalam pikiran, ya bagaimana kita bisa mengamalkannya? Karena kita sudah puas dengan keislaman kita di level ritual, saya kira. Ini mungkin PR-nya mungkin saya kira. Terima kasih. Thank you.
Thank you. We invite Dr. Bibi, Kak Bibi.
Okay. Assalamualaikum, Brother SHAHRAN, and very good morning to Dr. Professor Osman and all the learned scholars here. Basically, thank you for accepting my abstract. I'm going to share about the mental health issues with regard to the Malay community. Preferably, trying to look into not just Singapore context, but also in the Nusantara. I think there are a lot of issues that we need to address. But I think today's professor's paper is of great interest to me because I see there's a tension. If I were to look at the Malaysian slogan, Malaysia truly Asia, and I also agree with Nuruddin's brother Nuruddin's argument. We are the largest Malay Muslim community in this part of the world, and yet we are not impactful in many ways, economically, politically, whatever. So I think what we have to do, Professor being an academic and trying to create a platform to bring all of us together and to bring our community, our Nusantara intellectual to the higher level. Alhamdulillah, I think that's very good. But I think this idea of religiosity and ethnicity, we are going to really open the whole Pandora box, because it's not as simple as if you want to operationally define according to the scholar, because within this, among the scholars themselves, there's so much of diversity. So I think if we, being the Muslim in Islam, celebrate diversity because that shows the greatness of Allah, and if we can explain the whole idea, how the Malays embrace, I myself is a mix of Turkish, Pakistani, Malay, Chinese, Indian. That's my heritage. And yet I am very much identifying myself as a Malay Muslim community in Singapore. But because, again, this issue of ideology, political agenda and all that, so it's very difficult to have a homogeneous or a unified concept of Malay and religiosity. So I think what we have to do, we really have to unpack and this concept, and really get the academic from different parts, from the Islamic scholars, as well as like what Professor was mentioning, and then we can come with something that I think.
Thank you, Kak Bibi. Okay, Prof, we have another 5 minutes left. We leave it to you to make concluding remarks until we see you again next week.
Okay, SHAHRAN. First of all, thank you for all the presentations. I have some idea of what the presentations, the papers going to be presented by the writers next week, inshallah. But let me just, for example, by Dr. Suryadi, is at the level of rituals, and they already have a kind of contentment just to be at that level. But since you are talking here at focus, this is what I want to appreciate. What we would like focus to be. Focus is to be what, as the name suggests, it is forum. This forum. An intellectual forum, an academic forum, a scholarly forum, to discuss issues affecting of the region's ummah, which is more of a cultural stand. The Malay ummah has been very open.
The Bibi.
Yeah.
Bibi Jan of Singapore.
A mix origin, ethnic origin, but still identify, say, as Malay. That was the spirit. That was the spirit of the Malay worldview. That open. So going back to Dr. Suradi, see my presentation, I'm appealing to the Malay intellectuals, academics, to look at the problems that we have from the perspective of civilizational perspective. In whatever problems that you want to talk about, we discuss from within that perspective. So you want to talk about the problems or the mental illness, whatever. Yeah, mental illness is going to grow. Well, it's growing. It's going to be the most important problem that we're going to have. But we need to understand that in the light of our own tradition. How did Islamic tradition in the past, Islamic civilization in the past, deal with this problem? We cannot say that they didn't know about the problem, they didn't anticipate, but the question is how they approach to that. In other words, the Islamic worldview is one in which we emphasize unity. All right. In other words, every part of our civilization is related to other parts. The concept of health, that is concept of holistic perspective approach. So what was the view of Islamic civilization with regard to the idea of holistic health, where we don't separate between mental health, physical health, and kind of health? Yeah. So my point is, to sister who wants to talk about, say, the issue of mental health, the theoretical framework has to be different. We have to come up with an Islamic, Malay, Bati, for example, but that's only one. There are many others. Yeah. In other words, we just need to refer to the book of medicine, the canons of medicine of Ibn Sina, for example, psychology of Ibn Sina, how it look at the issue of health, the relevance of the kind of approach to our current situation. Because what the modern world is very good at is analytical, analyze, break up into little pieces, but never able really to integrate back, to synthesize, to come up with the whole picture again. And this is our problem. So we have to address it. We cannot be the same. Yeah, Muslim intellectuals, Muslim academic, we are the people of Tawheed. Tawheed means unity of knowledge, unity of perspectives, and so on. So my advice applies to all of you. Yeah. So at a forum like Focus, what is your philosophical or theoretical framework that you use in order to discuss your problem? Discuss in that context. If our brothers from Sri Lanka or from Turkey wants to understand the issue here, so the question of that the Ummah is divided into different ethnic groups, into different, say, the Turkish Ummah, the Malay Ummah, the Ummah in the Indian subcontinent. How they were related in the past? Yeah. That's why I think comparative study is very good. Comparative study between one branch of the Ummah and another branch of the Ummah. Yeah. So I'm sure your frame of reference may be Islam in the history of Turkey, for example. Then understand the relationship between Turkey, between the Ottoman Caliphate, for example, and the Malay World last time. So that's my point. What is your theoretical framework? And it's in that framework that you have defined, that you discuss your problem. In that way, we'll be able to contribute more to the revival, to the development of Islamic spiritual life, Islamic knowledge. So I think that thank you very much, Shahran.
Thank you so much, Prof. We look forward for next week's, inshallah, for very broad, topics on related to our team, inshallah. So we will update everyone. We will provide the passcode and the link by tomorrow. So inshallah, everyone can be accessed. There will be the whole day session from 10 o'clock in the morning until 8 p.m. You don't have to stay the whole time. You can come to your session and log in, or you can, because it's more on paper presenters. Inshallah. Thank you so much, Prof. Inshallah, we will take up your challenge to make focus will be a forum for new, for revival for Muslim intellectual in this region, inshallah. Today we have so many young, promising scholars who are ever willing to participate, to contribute in whatever they can. Thank you, everyone. Till then, we meet again next week. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.